A cruel monster took pleasure in the heinous methods of torture he inflicted on others as he moved from one horrific relationship to the next. But as whispers of a murder made their way to law enforcement, his final victim would tell a harrowing story from their shallow grave. And while the reign of terror would finally meet its end, everything would come crashing down in a far more jaw-dropping way, resulting in another death.
Hello?
Hello, this is a free call from an inmate at Santa Fe County Jail.
Hey, what are you doing? I'm driving. What are you doing? How are you feeling?
Good. I need you to call a detective for me. I need to talk to one because I know of something that happened to a little boy that kind of happened to our sister, and I need to talk to somebody.
And you found out about that in there?
Yes.
I can say it. You found out that somebody was, can I say it?
A kid, yes.
Murdered.
Yes.
The catalyst that set everything in motion began as nothing more than a casual conversation inside the confining walls of a prison. Two inmates at the Santa Fe County Adult Detention Center in New Mexico struck up a quick friendship. One of the women, however, had a shocking secret, and on one fateful day, she laid it all on the shoulders of her friend. Suddenly, the inmate was burdened with an astronomical moral dilemma. She knew she couldn't keep this kind of horrific secret to herself and placed a call to her sister.
You found out that a kid was murdered in there?
Yes.
You mean by one of his parents?
Yes, but I don't want you to...
And she confessed to you?
Yeah.
Shortly after law enforcement received the alarming message, an urgent meeting is about to get underway. The inmate, whose identity will not be disclosed out of fear for her safety, is clearly in a state of distress and seems to be praying as she waits for detectives to enter the interrogation room. In just a few minutes, the moment of truth will arrive, and everything will begin to unravel.
Okay?
Yeah.
I brought you out because a person, an anonymous person, I'm sure you know who that is, called me, brought things to my attention. I monitored the jail phone calls and heard some information, so that's why I brought you out to hear what you had to say, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So would you tell me a little bit about what's going on, what you know, what you heard? And what happened here stays here, okay?
The person that told me this story is a really, really good friend of mine. And I've been praying about it a lot. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can honestly talk. I just know about something that happened. And, the little kid buried it somewhere, and she told me a lot of stuff, and I don't want to, I don't want to, live with this, this stuff that she told me that's awful. It has a lot to do with it. And she gave me a lot of detail. I don't think I can say anything.
I understand it's hard because you think of this person as a friend, but at the same time, you got to think about the person it happened to. And I don't mean to bring up the past, but I understand that you had something like that happen to you and your family that was real close.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, you got to think about what the right thing to do is.
It's possible that upon hearing the details of the abuse, the inmate's own trauma was triggered. Oftentimes, when a person experiences a traumatic event, they will later act to try to rectify what happened to them in various ways. In some cases, the person can become a perpetrator themselves, while in other cases, the person may try to act to save others. This may help them to feel like they are able to reenact the trauma, but in a manner that allows them to defend themselves or stand up to the perpetrator. People who experience trauma and abuse often blame themselves for many years, or even a lifetime afterward. They tell themselves that they should have done this or that differently. They should have defended themselves. They should have fought back or reported the abuse. When they can fight for someone else, this helps them ease that unrest and that guilt they feel for not having stood up to the perpetrator or stood up for themselves.
I just wish you never told me that stuff. But I think I need to think about it.
Yeah. I believe that the right decision is to come forward because you got to think these people, if it is true, they hurt somebody. Okay? which means they have the potential to hurt somebody else, and you can keep that from happening.
You just say, I don't want nothing in return. This is what I know. Do something about it. Get justice for this little boy. Yeah, some people are sociopaths, and they can separate themselves from that. Some people are just psychopaths. You have to be careful.
It's clear that wrestling with the decision is excruciating for the inmate.
Who knows why she said this to you? Who knows if it's even true?
Right.
But we got to hear what you have to say. That way we can do a proper investigation and make sure that it's dealt with. Okay?
I think she's scared of him too, and she gets by him too, and I just know she wasn't lying by the details of the story. And her telling me, please don't tell anybody, please, like, and I promised her that I wouldn't. Because she said it, like, wasn't her fault. Like, she showed me the marks on her body, so I think he pretty much killed her son. They buried the body. She talks about, like, her boyfriend beating her. Like, she's really open to that. I just was trying to comfort her one day, and I think she just...
Is that how the conversation started? Kind of about?
Yeah. And then she just told me. And I don't even know if she wanted to know me. She just started crying and told me, and I didn't really...
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I don't know what to do. So.
The inmate sees sharing the information as the betrayal of a friend. It also seems like she empathizes with her, despite her knowledge of the horrific act her friend participated in. She stated that her friend is being abused by the guy. The inmate might see her as a victim, in a sense, but guilty of something horrific too. This may also explain the inmate's hesitation to talk. She may feel like she is further punishing her friend, who has already endured enough as a victim. Of course, from the perspective of the detectives, quickly obtaining details is crucial, and they continue to expound on the importance of doing so.
Let me ask you this, though. Let's say you wait to think about it, and they both get out. Something happens there after that. How would that make you feel? What if she gets out, her boyfriend gets out, she goes back to him, and the same thing that happened to this poor little kid happens to her? I don't think that would feel too good on your conscience, do you? Do you have kids?
Yeah.
How would you feel if this was your child?
Yeah, I've been to that feeling. I can do the same thing.
What happened with your sister?
Oh, she was...
Is this very similar to what happened with your sister?
Yeah.
What happened with that? You have to get too much of it.
She was just abused by my mom's boyfriend, and he told her.
Didn't tell me?
Yeah. And so I know, like, how it affected my mom, so I think of her as my mom. So I don't think I would be doing her any good. I feel like she's a victim also.
That's what touches the hardest. Is the kid, the child, the defenseless kid.
The thing is, I know you're having a tough time, and I know this is going to be hard, but we need names. This is a potential murder. It's not going to be just as easy as us letting you go back and think about it. We know you have knowledge about this. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that you're going to be a good person.
First off, what is her name? What's your family?
I can't do it. I can't. I can't.
It's never going to get easy because of how much you care on both sides. Do law enforcement...
That's why I know it's true, because of the way he's missing.
So there actually is a report of him missing? No.
While the detectives are sympathetic to the inmate's misgivings, the gravity of the situation is enormous. They subtly inform her that if she doesn't reveal what she knows, she could potentially be facing the criminal charge of obstruction. Cornering the inmate might give them the outcome they want, as she might reveal what she knows in order to avoid criminal charges. However, it would be much better to get her to willingly cooperate. They would likely get more thorough and detailed information from her if she doesn't feel threatened. By establishing some rapport with her, it's likely that the detectives could get her to the point where she feels comfortable speaking.
Can you call me later?
We can.
An intermission of a few hours occurs, giving the inmate time to do some soul-searching.
Okay, well, then if that's what it is, then you're probably going to, like, if you talk to him, then, you have to worry about your own safety, too. Because, people are sick enough to do that to their own kids. Imagine what they're capable of doing to someone else.
Yes.
And people just crazy like that. They don't have souls in there. They don't have a heart. You're not like that. You're lucky, but most bitches in there, they're not worth a at all. So don't let that into your soul. You be separate than that. And you do the right thing. You never get tired of doing the right thing. God works in a lot of mysterious ways, and God probably has a plan for this little boy to have peace.
Yeah.
So this is all in God's hands. So you shouldn't worry about nothing, but don't put yourself in danger.
When she enters the room this time around, the inmate is accompanied by her attorney and has come to terms with her decision. Out of concern for her safety, a judge has agreed to her early release, provided that she divulges to detectives all that she was told. Though the inmate has no involvement in the alleged crime, the detectives cover her Miranda rights out of an abundance of caution. Then, they quickly focus in on the specifics.
Can you tell us what you heard her say?
Okay, so her name is Tracy. He works here. I wrote his name down on a book in there. She just told me that he hit her. He also hit the son. And she was incarcerated I think she said for a week. She was worried about her kids because he's so abusive, so violent. And he was dead. He was black and blue. He was bleeding. His eyes were open. So they decided to make a plan. And they thought it was time to go for his body relocation. And then he was 14 when he was buried. And I asked her how would he not be missing? She said that they tell people that her aunt has custody of him. He's in another state with her aunt in her custody.
How did you guys start talking about this?
First she was telling me about how abusive her boyfriend is and how bad he is and how she's afraid that he's going to kill her one day and she's worried about her kids because they're out there and he's going to get out soon. And she's afraid for their safety. So that's why she wanted to get out right away to be back with him in case he does get out. So she has 2 other kids. She lives in San Fe.
Did she tell you whereabouts?
Even though the inmate has no details relating to when the alleged burial occurred, she has provided an extremely important piece of information.
And she said her boyfriend's last name was Ferguson.
Mm-hmm. And I have his first name written down in the room.
No name on the kid? I don't know if you got you ever.
No, I don't remember his name.
As the inmate mentioned previously, the woman by the name of Tracy claimed to have other children as well. Naturally, the detective sees the urgency in the situation.
Like I told you from the get-go, I'm concerned. You just told me she had a...
Yeah, she's worried about them because they're homeless right now. They're living in a truck, she said. And then I asked, how does he treat your other kids? He treats the daughter very nice. But when they get in fights, or she'll leave for a while, he said, you better come back or I'll kill your other kids. So he's very dangerous. She's so afraid of him.
Before they conclude the interview, they show the inmate some photos. First, she's presented with mugshots of a man they believe to be a suspect, and she's unable to identify him.
Do you happen to know who that is?
Yeah, that's her.
Does she tell you anything else about her boyfriend? Anything else he does, or besides him being abusive?
Yeah, doesn't. She doesn't. She has a bunch of scars all over from him.
Yeah.
The detectives are confident that they've collected what they need to set everything in motion, and they reassure the inmate that coming forward was the right thing to do. The interview concluded in the very early morning hours of January 25, 2018. While detectives had their work cut out for them, they were able to identify persons of interest, Thomas Ferguson and Tracy Pena. A little digging through records confirmed that Tracy did have 2 young children, a son by the name of Jeremiah Valencia, age 14, and a daughter approximately 1 year younger than Jeremiah. The following day, on January 26th of 2018, the sheriff's office contacted known relatives of Tracy in an effort to locate Jeremiah. What they found was very troubling. Tracy's aunt and Jeremiah's godmother, Celine Miera, and Jeremiah's older half-sister, Karen Gonzalez, hadn't seen him since the previous July. More than 6 months had passed since that time. Detectives obtained text and social media messages, and the content revealed fragments of a chilling story, some of which was told by Jeremiah himself. The communication painted a heartbreaking portrait of a neglected boy whose mother's recurring problems were not at all lost on him. In late January of 2017, a sequence of messages between Jeremiah and his mother showed a worried son attempting to engage with his inattentive mother. Jeremiah wrote, "Thomas said that he's in town and he's looking for you and that he's saying that you're going to hurt yourself." He then told Tracy he loved her, but received no response. It appears he and his sister had been staying with their great-aunt, as he sent a message stating that she'd told them to get ready, their mother would be coming. He asked if she was all right, and when and if she was coming, but the messages went unanswered. Over time, the messages became more upsetting. On June 11th of 2017, correspondence between Jeremiah and a friend indicated things weren't going well for him. "Yeah, I've not been so good, and my mom just quit on me." He told his friend on that same day that he attempted to stop smoking pot, but wasn't able to give it up. When his friend asked how his mother was doing, he replied, "My mom is not doing good. She's doing very bad. She's doing drugs." Judging by what Jeremiah was explaining to a friend about his situation, he felt completely abandoned, and he was frequently engaging in fighting. He said he wasn't the same as he'd been before. He was losing it. He mentioned that he'd stopped going to school and was bored a few days later. It was true. He'd been removed from a school under the pretense that he'd been transferred to another, sometime in early 2017. However, he was never enrolled, and somehow his absence went unnoticed. Then, the following month, in early July, Jeremiah told a friend that he had gone to Clovis, Texas to pick up his brother. Based on Thomas's text messages with Jordan Nunez, his 19-year-old, formerly estranged son. Jordan was brought to live with them at this time, and let's just say that things definitely didn't improve for Jeremiah from there. Even more unsettling was the content of a phone call that occurred that very morning on January 26th. Coincidentally, Tracy and Thomas were both incarcerated on charges unrelated to this particular case. It's unclear what landed Tracy behind bars this particular time, but Thomas had failed to appear at a court proceeding relating to a cocaine charge. His son Jordan had managed to coordinate a three-way call, which led to a rather suspicious conversation. And due to the information provided by Tracy's fellow inmate, recorded phone calls were already being closely monitored by the sheriff's office.
I've been crying every fucking day. Like, I cry almost all night long. Every fucking day, no matter what. Like, I cry all the time. It fucking is ridiculous.
For burglar?
No, for the people.
Oh, I know, me too.
Oh, like,
the first
all
couple
day
days
long.
was rough for me over here. Babe. Hey. Let's talk about that out there.
The conversation definitely captured the attention of detectives. That same day, the sheriff's office promptly made their first contact with each individual, and since they were already housed at the Santa Fe Correctional Facility, they were easy to track down.
Tracy, how's it going?
I was better until I saw you.
Let you know what's going on at the office. And we've talked about all that.
What do you mean? What office? You're taking me to?
Sheriff's office. My county sheriff's office.
Okay.
So we'll make sure everything's over there. We'll explain everything what's going on.
We're going to have a seat. We're going to press it. Just keep following him. We'll have a seat, right? I was going to need this. Right, yeah, drink water or anything?
No, I'm good.
You guys can probably take it in there now. Okay. And then just turn the light on and turn that cord on right away. Okay. We're going to go in this room where you are, Tracy.
I always thought I have never say that.
Just follow the
Stack man.
Where are these paintings?
the dude in the gray again.
That's not enough.
Somewhere around this time, Thomas was also brought in for questioning.
I don't know what's going on, bro. Some people over there can talk to you. Somebody come get you. So, that's all I know.
I thought you were on probation.
Oh, you got picked up or what? Yeah. Absconding or what are you doing?
Yeah, this is because my son I hadn't seen my son in 12 years. And mom sent him to me.
That's all. Oh, for real? From where?
From Texas.
Oh, shit. How many years?
Well, I was in prison for a while.
Yeah.
Then, like, I left on my phone and I was at work. And I guess you didn't answer the phone or I don't know.
That's all.
I didn't answer the phone because I was working construction all the day.
Well, we'll have you sit in the front with me, brother, in the blue car. We'll get you to the office and get you a water or something, bro.
I'm okay.
Or anything.
I just don't know what's going on.
Shifts are, yeah, I don't know either, bro. They told me just to come get you, so.
A few minutes later, they arrive at the sheriff's office.
Have a seat in this room, bro.
Yes, sir. We're right here.
Yeah, that one in the corner is good, brother. Oh. Cold in the jail.
It seems the detective is priming Thomas for the pending interrogation that will be led by another detective as they engage in small talk and establish rapport.
What's your son's name? Jordan. Oh, well, didn't he punch some dude up north?
Yeah.
Yeah, because your last name's Ferguson, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I heard about that, bro.
As a matter of fact, Thomas's 19-year-old son, Jordan Nunez, had punched some dude. And seeing how he will soon become an integral part of this whole catastrophe, it's important to include details of the altercation that occurred the month prior. It was early the previous December, and wouldn't you know, it was all captured on video. Surveillance footage shows Jordan and a friend exiting what appears to be a grocery store around 8:15 that night. A vehicle pulls into the parking lot and parks near a white truck. Two people exit the vehicle and head for the store, but the male figure soon turns around, and we see Jordan exit the passenger side of the truck. It appears the two have words as Jordan follows the man, both heading toward the store. Then Jordan gets in the man's face and lands a sudden punch square in his jaw. We see the man and his girlfriend at the entrance at the store, immediately after the assault has occurred. It appears someone is recording the altercation on his cell phone. Police respond and speak with the man.
Do you want to press charges? What do you want to do, man?
Yeah, I'm thinking about pressing charges.
So it's a yes or a no?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
They also catch up with Jordan, and he makes an intriguing comment as he gives his side of the story leading up to when he threw the single punch.
When he called my name.
What did he call you?
He called me. Stupidest thing to get in a fight over, but, I'm a hothead,
Perhaps an indication of his true temperament. The theory will be further supported as the story wears on. Back in the interrogation, the rapport building between the detective and Thomas continued.
Are you guys living up north now, or where are you living?
That's where I was living until I came in here.
Oh, okay.
The detective kept at the conversation for an extended period of time while another detective was speaking with Tracy down the hall. She'd been advised of her Miranda rights and agreed to shed light on the situation. Well, she gave her version of it. The main focus of the interrogation was to establish her children's whereabouts. According to Tracy, her daughter was in the care of Thomas's son Jordan, while she and Thomas were both incarcerated. She claimed Jeremiah, on the other hand, had run away a few weeks earlier. When asked why she hadn't reported the 14-year-old child as a runaway, she explained that she had active arrest warrants. Naturally, she wanted to avoid contact with law enforcement. But during the interrogation, Tracy's story soon changed. She provided conflicting statements and, when confronted, she referred back to her prison visit a few months prior that spanned November 24th through the 26th. And that was precisely when a glimpse into the true horror of the situation began to show itself. According to official police documents, Tracy explained that it started when she returned to her Santa Fe rental home on November 26th, upon release from her latest stint at the detention center. Once there, she located Jeremiah on his futon bed, wrapped in a blanket. However, upon a closer look, it was clear that he wasn't sleeping. His eyes were wide open, his stare blank. His body was completely stiff, lifeless. Up to that point, it seemed the story could be viable. However, the tale then became foggy, as Tracy provided a particularly vague sequence of events. After realizing that her son Jeremiah was dead, Tracy found Thomas in the garage of the rental home. She informed Thomas of what she'd observed. Then Thomas allegedly moved Jeremiah from the futon to a vehicle, departed the premises with Jeremiah's body, and later returned by himself. She claimed that they never spoke about what happened. However, given that Tracy's story had already evolved just during the course of her short interview, detectives were likely questioning the validity of her account. A couple of weeks later, on December 6th, which would have marked Jeremiah's 14th birthday, Thomas allegedly drove Tracy to a secluded location a few miles east of their residence. They exited the vehicle and walked a short distance, at which time Thomas informed Tracy that her son's body had been buried nearby.
Yes. Daddy, what'd you say?
At this time, it was pretty clear that a conversation with Thomas was in order, and the rapport-building phase had more than run its course. The detective quickly cut to the chase.
Can I speak to you in private?
Yeah.
Just you?
Can we talk in private? This is private right here. You know, the officers need to watch it. I'll get them all out of that room. Get out of the room. Look, they're all getting out. Go. Excuse me. All right, let's go.
It's an unconventional setting for an interrogation as we strain to pick up bits and pieces of dialogue recorded by a detective's body camera. But the most important elements are captured, and you won't believe what Thomas is about to divulge.
I didn't do that to him. What he told me to do is that whenever she went into the house, that Jeremiah looked like he had been turned different. So he had to be, when I went outside, he had to be like, one of them turned different. Unless one of them turned different. I laid him on his side. He was facing like this. When I went in, she told me he passed away. He was looking up like that. Like a blank stare. Yeah, like, I don't know, like weird. Like, that's not the way I laid him down. He broke down crying, she broke down crying. I don't know. They talked about something. That's where my mind's at. You know what I mean? They're trying to blame me. You know what I'm saying? Why would your own son blame me?
An interesting topic that we'll soon hear more of. Then, Thomas's concern swiftly transitions to what Tracy's daughter may or may not be saying.
All she remembers is being at the house. She's not saying anything. So we don't have it. Her saying, Mom did it. I'm not saying it. George told me about it. Morning. We will find out. I have nothing but confidence in my team, because myself and my lieutenant, they were commander of this. How are you going to know? Because I don't even know if you did it. I didn't know who was in the living room with them when they were there. Listen to me. You'd be amazed on what forensic science can do. Okay? I don't know if you watch TV, but there's some similarity. But I have to gas crime scenes first. Once we find one, we're going to have all my office of the medical examiner. Okay? They'll figure out how we died. Some sort of admission. We don't know that right now. Okay? But what we do know is he died in our house and nobody did anything about it. We're going to look at the evidence. We're going to look at the scenes. We're going to look at his body. Like I said, my team is damn good at what they do. I've never lost a murder case in my entire career. I'm here. My whole team's here. This department's here to give this kid justice.
However, it's clear by Thomas's response that his only concern is himself.
But you justice doesn't mean charging me with something I didn't do. That's what I'm saying. Well, we still have the probable cause because of the fact that you were there. You're already in this mix, dude. You're going to have to fight it. You're going to have to do whatever you got to do. You're going to help me. Well, if you help us, and that evidence proves otherwise, that's going to be good. You're going to take a ride. We're not going to take a ride right now. I'm going to help you with this. I know more or less, but I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get any of that. So, if I put you in a car, me and a couple other guys, there's me and you. Well, I have to take somebody else with me. That's against our policy. Okay? And the only reason I know the area is because and I don't know exactly the exact spot, but I know more or less. If I do that, I'm going to get to the house. Where am I going to go? Am I going to get told? You're still going to inside right now, so I can see that way. That's it. Either way.
While this interview is taking place, it turns out that someone else is listening in, unbeknownst to Thomas, and that someone happens to be no other than his son, Jordan.
I think that all of you guys had something to do with that, and that's why we're going to get charged. That's why. You want to help us find him?
Your mother trying to blame me? Well, brother, that's what they got to talk to you about, my man. Okay. So, just don't ask any questions right now. Hold tight. I'll get you. Okay.
A few members of the sheriff's office are getting geared up to take Thomas out in search of Jeremiah's burial site, though it's unclear how Thomas would know the area if he truly wasn't there when Jeremiah's body was abandoned. Still, he claims to know the vicinity of the location, more or less. Of course, he maintains that he wasn't the person who was responsible for the death.
Good question you asked. This one? They're trying to put this on me?
Mm-hmm.
A father attempting to shift blame away from himself and toward his own son during an investigation would be inconceivable under typical circumstances. But within the context of this terrible situation, we're beginning to see a pattern, a window into the mind of an extremely disturbed individual. This is a classic case of antisocial personality disorder. People with APD will lie, deceive, and manipulate others in order to fulfill their self-serving needs. A typical parent, if faced with a situation where it's either their freedom or that of their child, would rather sacrifice themselves. Thomas, on the other hand, clearly has no qualms about implicating those closest to him in the name of self-preservation, and his accusations will only become more blatant from here. 3 members of the sheriff's office, along with Thomas, arrive at the alleged site around 10 o'clock that same night and begin to scour the area.
They said it wasn't hard to walk down. Dude, like I said, I wasn't out here, but I'm telling you. They said there was a no dumping sign, and I saw no dumping sign. I was going up along the road.
The fact that Thomas keeps repeating that he wasn't there is an indication of deception. He wants to make sure he emphasizes that he was not there, because people who lie tend to have at least some level of insecurity about their lie, or they want to make sure that the receiver is buying their lie. This type of repetition is called emphasis in verbal communication analysis. People can engage in emphasis either verbally or in nonverbal ways. When liars try to omit information or provide false information, their emphasis will typically appear unnatural, such as in Thomas's case. They continue to make their way through the rough terrain, but what they're looking for isn't clear. One of the detectives requests more information.
Hey, Thomas says, you reckon a blanket? I don't know, dude. I didn't wrap them up. I didn't do any of that. You don't know anything about that? I'm telling you, possibly a yellow blanket, according to her. What I remember, he says like a blue comforter, dude. Like what I covered him with in the room? Yeah. It was like a bluish white, blue on one side. Okay. And white comforter. That's when he was breathing, like I told you guys. Okay. He said you could walk like down a little hill. Yeah. And then you walk down kind of like an angle like this, and then you turn, and it's like a little thing where like water went. Water went. Like how water ran? Like you know, like when it rains or the water will. Culvert. Yeah. Culvert. I don't know about a culvert, but like a pipe where it washes down. Okay. Oh, I got you. It washes away. I got you. Like a little ditch or some shit. Yeah. Something like that is what they told me. Okay.
Thomas repeatedly refers to they and her. The only potential individuals he could be implicating are Tracy, Jordan, and Tracy's young daughter. Once again, the repetition is a sign that he's being deceptive.
I have to get those dogs out here, bro. I really want to find them, dude. I'll put this close. Do you want to just go down a little bit more? Yeah. I feel like he's right here, bro. Somewhere right here.
But the search ends before a gravesite is found, and the reason behind Thomas's inability to locate Jeremiah's resting place is murky at best. Either he truly doesn't know the location, or he's putting forth his best effort to convince law enforcement that this is the case. Considering what Tracy is about to assert relating to Thomas's involvement in the sacrilegious burial, you'll soon be able to draw your own conclusion. It's the following morning when she is escorted by detectives to the very area visited with Thomas the previous night.
And there's a tree. I think this is it.
After just several minutes on site, they approach the location where Tracy believes Jeremiah's body may be hidden.
So you're sure this is it? Okay. And this is what you remember?
Sir, I couldn't see the cars, but I could hear them.
Okay. All right. Did you want to say anything to him? Let me go back to you. Or do me a favor, go back to yours, go to Juan Medina, and mark it up. We're going to take good care of it.
I don't care. I mean, the person from yesterday, I don't care. It's my fault that he's gone. But
like I told you, he's my priority. I've been thinking about since I got this case in. Putting my whole heart into this. Okay?
I said me and Jordan were talking about this the other day, like a week before I got arrested. It was how we could call the cops on him or what we could do. Because he doesn't leave any of this alone.
I already guys have been through hell, but this is where all that stuff ends right now.
Yeah, but I still don't have my day.
I know. Well,
still something I need to and didn't have to.
And I'm going to do everything in my power. I'm going to do everything else hard to make him do.
Like I said, I don't even care if it's not Princeton. I don't want to. I don't want to know. Well, it's because I can. I would have done it before if I could.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm in a situation where I can, and it was just a convenient coincidence that we both got arrested at the same time, because every other time I come to jail, he's outside with Bug, and I see him like. One day we were at the house. It was like a couple of days after this happened, and I was crying, and I started like clear, and he was like, "Mom, what's wrong?" And I started crying even harder, and I was like, "You went crazy." I was like, I could hear him, but now when I pay attention, I can hear him, and I can see him once in a while. I could see him. It's okay, I'm okay. And then I would tell him, "Baby, let's just go. Just me and you will run away. We'll go away from. We'll do whatever just to get away from him."
A terrible way to live. Most of all for two children who were pulled into the mess by no fault of their own.
Well, it seems kind of like a risky spot to pull off the side of the road. And because, I mean, I know when I was on patrol, if I would have seen a truck or something tucked in here, I would have came back here. You know what I mean?
Well, he always had the dogs with him, too. And for that reason, he'd just say, "Oh, well, the dogs need to go out."
Tracy is referring here to several pit bulls she and Thomas kept. But this raises a disturbing question. Were there more bodies hidden in the vicinity? They continue to observe the area.
There's another tire over there. So, see, like last night, he kept on saying guardrail and tires and glass.
See, and then there's a wood pellet, and there's a bunch of wood pellets either in or behind the garage.
Is that from your house?
It looks like it.
Could these be his tracks?
Yeah.
Okay, let's stay off those.
Okay.
Hey, we want to stay off these tracks because she said he backed in right here. I walked that way too, but I mean, there's still good impressions.
That's how I figured out that he had put a GPS tracker on my phone, was because even when I turned it off, he could still find where I was at.
This dude is no good.
My poor Jordan, he was already like, he was all, the only way we're going to get rid of him is if we kill him. That's the only way we're going to get away from him. I was like, we can't. Like, we'll figure out something. And we were all like grasping at straws. And then Blog, she was like my main concern after. Like, I was like, and she was.
She's scared to death of him too.
Oh, all of us are scared of him.
Did you slit her head with bullcrap after all this?
Oh, probably. I tried, but she was crying one day, and I told her, "What's wrong, baby?" She was like, "Mom, he doesn't even use the bathroom. He makes you go in there with him." Like, she was like, "He can't even take a shit by himself." And he would be like, "Come here," and then I'd be like, "Dude, I want to stand there with you."
How did you do that?
So that he could know where I was at, because he always thought I was going to call the cops. And then when we were in the hotel, he would disconnect the phone and he would hide the phone. The kidnapping charge that he's on.
Yeah.
I looked it up, because I was looking up a court case, and there's a charge and all this stuff that wasn't on his paperwork, but it's because they dismissed the charge.
Yeah.
And all he got was the kidnapping.
Still a pretty serious damn charge.
It was true. Thomas had an extensive criminal history, including violent offenses that spread over the previous 20 years. In fact, he'd later be referred to by the New Mexico State Police Chief as a career criminal. He'd more than earned the title. In 2003, he was found guilty of battery on a household member in Santa Fe. In 2015, Thomas pleaded guilty to kidnapping and aggravated battery against a household member. His sentence consisted mostly of supervised probation. The following year, in 2016, a criminal complaint was filed in Sandoval County, New Mexico. Apparently, when Thomas's probation officer checked in on him, a woman who was his girlfriend at that time answered the door and seemed to be exhibiting signs of battery. Upon word of the occurrence, a Santa Fe prosecutor filed a motion to revoke Thomas's probation. A judge found that he had indeed violated his probation. However, instead of serving the remainder of his sentence in prison, as recommended by a state probation officer, the judge allowed Thomas to remain on probation. On November 20th of 2017, the Santa Fe District Attorney's Office filed yet another motion to revoke Thomas's probation. This time around, he'd absconded. He'd failed to report to his probation officer the previous summer, and he'd moved to a different residence without being permitted to do so, as required by the court. Approximately 1 week later, Jeremiah was dead.
I don't want to know everything that happened, but I want you guys to know everything that happened. I want to know everything. Well, I want you guys to know everything that happened to me. I don't want to know the details of it. It hurts too much. The stuff I already know is too much.
Tracy was right. It was all too much. And before all was said and done, another life would meet its untimely end, one that no one could have ever predicted.
You never say anything about beating him or anything like that?
He said that, he scratched my car, but I had to hit him. And then he said something about hitting him with the car and, stuff like that. But I thought he was just talking because Jeremiah he is a tough kid. He never complained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He never, and he wouldn't tell me, he just told me, I can handle it. He's not, I can handle it.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Mom, I'm strong. I got this. And he got mad one day because he was going to hit Jeremiah, and I told him, I got up and I was like, don't touch him. And he was like, you want to beat you instead? I said, yeah. And so he beat the out of me. I had 2 black eyes. He broke my nose.
I think Thomas was afraid of Jeremiah growing up, getting bigger, and beating the shit out of him.
He would have. I think he had already tried once he threw the chemicals at him and stuff.
Yeah.
He was like, this kid is too much.
You heard that correctly. Jeremiah had chemicals thrown on him, and that wasn't even the worst of it.
I think you're exactly right. That's exactly what it was. He knew Jeremiah was going to be bigger and stronger and smarter than him, and he saw him as a threat.
Yep.
People with antisocial personality disorder can have very primitive instincts in the sense that they often have to feel like the alpha or the dominant member of the family, the group, or the gang. We don't know a lot about Jeremiah's personality, but maybe the young boy had qualities that Thomas sensed were a threat to his alpha role in the home. Additionally, people with antisocial personality disorder demand total obedience from those they believe they lead. They will often feel insulted or personally attacked if someone in the family or group defies or challenges them. They will often retaliate against that person, only they will do so in a manner that is far more severe than whatever the family member or group member did to them. People with antisocial personality are highly spiteful and vindictive, so this contributes to the severity of their retaliation against others for what they perceive as an offense. They also hate being exposed to the group as being a tyrant, even if they are. If, for instance, Jeremiah called Thomas out for being unfair or cruel, Thomas was exposed to the rest of the family and his position of power and control in the household was jeopardized. Or at least, this could have been the way Thomas saw it. Cadaver dogs arrive at the scene as law enforcement prepares for the next steps in recovering what they believe to be Jeremiah's remains.
Tracy, I have to take you back now, okay? But we're gonna keep you updated.
So I'm gonna be at your office. Will you call and let them know? Please, just so I can.
We will. I promise you. Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna do our job.
I appreciate you. I do. Please.
As the cadaver dog begins his undertaking, a detective references a ghastly claim made by Tracy earlier that day.
She said she's been out there twice. Yeah. She even said that he moved the body. Or possibly.
No, she said that he would threaten to move the body if she didn't do what he said and all this crap.
So she wouldn't know where he was at?
Yeah.
But the K-9 reinforced Tracy's assumption that they'd located the correct area. Tree branches had been arranged in a pile, an animal skull placed on top. The cadaver dog signaled to its handler that human remains lay there below the surface. While January 27th had proved to be a terribly heartbreaking day, the developments that came along with it were paramount to the case. In addition to uncovering the location where Jeremiah's remains were believed to have been hidden, a search of the deserted rental home was conducted upon issuance of a search warrant. And, within those walls, haunting glimpses into the terrible conditions where Jeremiah spent the unbearable ending to his young life would be exposed.
Look for blood in the bathroom and in the bathtub.
Can I get a call number?
Yeah, I was coming.
Awesome. Here's a rag.
A bag? They just called and said at the safe house the little girl said that he would lock the little boy in the kennel. Yeah. Dog kennel.
Even seasoned members of law enforcement can't believe what they're hearing.
So this is where they left this.
Yeah.
This is freezing in here.
On January 28th, the following day, an extremely complex and intricate excavation was carried out at the burial site. Various members of law enforcement went to great lengths to preserve evidence. After several hours of painstaking efforts, the plastic storage container was finally extracted from the ground where it had been dumped upside down. An autopsy was performed on Monday, January 29th, the morning after remains believed to be those of Jeremiah had been located, and the findings were deeply disturbing. Law enforcement would become privy to all of the horrendous details relating to how the injuries were sustained as the story would continue to unfold. And as you'll see, the types of cruel wounds inflicted on the child could have only been conjured up by the most evil of minds. Jeremiah's younger sister was able to shed some light on how her brother had met his horrific end, though she wasn't able to provide the full, gruesome picture. She underwent 2 separate forensic interviews. This type of interview is conducted with minors for the purpose of getting information about or any violence the child may have witnessed. Initially, on January 26th, when asked where Jeremiah was, she stated that he was living with a relative of Thomas in the city of Mora, New Mexico. Coincidentally, her answers relating to Jeremiah's alleged whereabouts mirrored those that had been provided by Jordan during an interview he'd participated in at the sheriff's office that day. Tracy's daughter underwent her second forensic interview after speaking with her mother on January 27th. Tracy directed her to reveal the whole ugly truth, and this time around, her daughter's answers to questions were significantly different. Based on her account, Jeremiah's last few weeks at that rental property could only be described as hell on earth. Thomas had abused Jeremiah to the point that he needed a cane to walk, and at times would use a wheelchair. Horrifyingly so, Thomas would often confine Jeremiah to a dog kennel. The little girl stated that Tracy would slip Jeremiah food and water so long as Thomas wasn't aware. She confirmed that Jeremiah had died around November 26th after suffering an especially brutal beating at the hands of Thomas. After the blow subsided, a bloodied Jeremiah was shoved into a kennel by Thomas, and also Jordan. Tracy's daughter assumed that was where he died. Sometime after he was gone, according to the account, Thomas and Jordan then moved Jeremiah's body to a futon located in one of the bedrooms. A few days later, Thomas, Tracy, and Jordan transported Jeremiah's remains to the isolated burial site. Tracy's daughter stated that she remained at home. Thomas provided her with explicit instructions. Should anyone ever ask where Jeremiah was, she was to state that he was living in Mora, New Mexico. However, the story behind the tragic death of a young boy was much more sordid than originally met the eye. It was a case where looks certainly were deceiving. The most unimaginable of betrayals was about to be exposed. You'll be absolutely stunned by what you're about to hear.
I think they were both in on it, her and her boyfriend.
Even women will kill a child. They will.
She actually says, she sad,
She had no emotion. Like she wasn't crying at all.
No, sadness in her eyes whatsoever. Like the details she told me was just like, what the that's how I know this is true, because of the details.
Tracy put on a completely different front at the scene where Jeremiah's body was disposed of. She's sobbing intensely, typical of the way any mother would be grieving her deceased child. Tracy appears to be in severe emotional pain. However, the inmate has described the behaviors of a person with severe antisocial personality disorder. No remorse, no empathy, no taking accountability, and no regret for what she allegedly admitted to the inmate relating to what she and Thomas did to Jeremiah. If what the inmate is saying is true, this means that Tracy has the ability to morph from a cold-blooded killer, void of any empathy or remorse, to a seemingly grieving mother. Shockingly so, it appears those tears at Jeremiah's resting site were not at all genuine, but purely manufactured.
Yeah, some people are sociopaths and they can separate themselves from that. You have to be careful.
Indeed, people with antisocial personality disorder can separate themselves and separate their emotions from a situation or from the memory of the wrongdoing they committed.
She even said that they would throw chemicals on him, torture him, pretty much. And she said he was a brat, he was a little ass. So to me, she didn't care about him. She doesn't listen. Because I heard her talking to other girls about her kids. She won't name the other one.
Failing to mention a deceased child could be interpreted as a parent being in denial, which can be typical of someone who is suffering mentally and emotionally. However, the angle the inmate presents on Tracy's behaviors is one of complete lack of empathy and regret. You see, detectives knew Tracy was likely involved in her child's death from the very beginning. Armed with the preliminary information provided by the informant, they weren't buying Tracy's claims that she was just another victim, thrown into the mix of unfortunate lives who'd crossed paths with evil. Among the leads that came pouring into the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office during those first several days was a crucial account that started with another phone call. As it turned out, the woman on the other end had recently engaged in some strange encounters, and she felt compelled to share details with law enforcement. The detective visited the woman, her husband, and their daughter at their home that very evening on January 29th, and what they had to say would answer quite a few questions. However, many new ones would be raised as well, including the possibility of Jordan's involvement in the circumstances that led to Jeremiah's death. And as luck would have it, Jordan had taken part in another interview himself earlier that day. Detectives were able to use details Jordan alleged stacked right up against those provided by the woman and her family.
How's it going, sir? Thank you.
Have a seat,
Thank you for
please.
calling us.
Sure.
So, Thomas is your cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jordan came by today.
Jordan came by yesterday.
Did he disclose anything to you why he's been bringing property over here or anything?
He said that they lived in a house. They were renting a house or something in Albuquerque or Mount or something, and they needed to move out of there because it was haunted or something.
And was this recently?
No, it's been like a month or two.
Then, several weeks prior to this interview, she explained, there was an evening when Thomas showed up, unannounced, with Jordan, Tracy, Jeremiah, and Tracy's daughter. She invited everyone in for dinner. However, Tracy and Jeremiah stayed behind in their vehicle. According to Thomas, Jeremiah was sick. After dinner, Thomas's cousin packed meals for Tracy and Jeremiah and took them to the vehicle. However, she wasn't able to observe much at the time, other than it appeared that Jeremiah was seated in the back of the vehicle. It's very possible that Jeremiah had serious injuries, so he stayed in the car, or was forced to stay in the car, so Thomas's cousin and the rest of the family in the home wouldn't see him.
It was so dark, and I think he was wearing a hoodie and had his head down. I never met him, though.
She recalled a more recent visit, which marked the start of regular visits that came shortly thereafter. It was only Jordan and Tracy's daughter who came around on this occasion, and they had a special request.
If the dogs could, she asked if they could leave the dogs here because they had pit bulls. Because they had gotten kicked out of their home or whatever, and Tommy got arrested.
Do you remember how long ago that was?
And the mom got arrested. It was when Tommy had gotten arrested.
Okay.
In the days that followed, Jordan and Tracy's daughter visited the woman's home on multiple occasions, mostly tending to the pit bulls. When she inquired about Jeremiah, she was told that he was at a boys' ranch. She found it concerning that Tracy's daughter was being cared for by Jordan, someone of no relation to her. Then, one day prior to the interview, Jordan dropped some mind-blowing accusations during the course of a conversation with the woman's husband.
For some reason, he said that he's trying to pin that little boy's dead. I said, what? Like, what are you saying? He's all, oh, my dad would beat him. And he said he tried to get out one day and he put a gun to his face and brass knuckle or something like that. He goes, if you say anything, you better say this or I'll kill you or something.
She explained that her husband then conveyed to her what Jordan had said. When Jordan returned to the property later that afternoon, she had to hear it all for herself.
Is it true what you told my husband? He said about the little boy? And he said, yeah, and then he just spilled the penis too. We stayed talking about an hour.
I think he beat him to death and snapped his neck and he had cuts all over his leg and everything because he messed up his Cadillac a little bit and he didn't pick up the poop from the dog and everything, abusing him. But I can't do nothing because he killed me.
He told me that that Tommy had kept him inside barricaded, like a prison. That he would keep him inside, that he would lock him up, he would bolt them, and that they couldn't even take a shower or use the bathroom because they were locked inside the rooms. Mm-hmm. He said something about him doing meth. He said that one time he had seen Tommy punch Jeremiah and knock out his teeth and maybe break his jaw. They were all afraid of him, that he would threaten to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan then alleged that he'd attempt to protect Tracy's daughter from the beatings and that he should have done the same for Jeremiah. But his story of what happened to Jeremiah in the end was different than what we've heard before.
He had questioned Tommy about Jeremiah and that Tommy just gave him. And then, like, a couple of weeks later, Tommy told Jordan, I'm going to tell you what happened. And that he told Jordan that he killed him. He said that Tommy put a gun to his head and told him that he better take the fall for it or else he was going to kill him. He didn't protect Jeremiah because he was afraid, because Tommy had brass knuckles and he had a knife.
Then he arrived at the point of the story where Jeremiah's life ended.
Tommy picked up Jeremiah and took him into the room and bolted it and turned the radio up really loud. And that the mom was in jail at the time when it happened, and that Tommy fed her some kind of shit excuse that Jeremiah had an infection or something. I don't know. I don't even know what to believe. He thought that, or thinks that Tommy buried him somewhere.
However, this version definitely didn't agree with the one Jordan had provided to law enforcement earlier that day. It was far more detailed. Apparently, his own self-preservation instincts kicked in at that very time. Like father, like son, as they say. Knowing full well that Thomas was attempting to pin the whole thing on him, the floodgates opened, and the most horrendous of details finally came spilling out. Please be advised that the following segment may be disturbing for some viewers. According to Jordan, Thomas beat Jeremiah with brass knuckles, a cane, and a homemade spear in addition to a 5-pound hammer and his steel-toed boots. He would lock Jeremiah in a kennel and forced him to wear adult diapers. Thomas would urinate on him. Thomas's extremely cruel behaviors demonstrated his enjoyment of the process of inflicting pain and suffering on others. And it seems that he enjoyed doing this to those who were vulnerable and weaker than him. People with severe antisocial personality disorder can often display this particular trait, where they enjoy the process of developing and thinking about torture methods, and then they enjoy the process of inflicting these methods slowly upon their victims. Doing so slowly allows them to extend the process and the enjoyment longer. They derive a sense of power and control. It's both the planning and thinking phase and the actual process of inflicting that give them satisfaction. Jordan alleged that Jeremiah had been strangled to the point that he lost consciousness on more than one occasion. Each time, Jordan was sure Jeremiah's life had been brought to an end, but Jeremiah continued to awaken, only to endure more excruciating torture. He confirmed that Jeremiah's final beating occurred during Tracy's prison stay toward the end of the previous November. The altercation began in the living room of the dilapidated residence. Thomas allegedly punched Jeremiah in the face and on his body repeatedly, then dragged him through the kitchen, the bathroom hallway, and into Thomas's room. Once there, Thomas continued to punch a bleeding Jeremiah in the face with such force that some of his teeth were said to have been knocked out. It was then that Thomas shoved Jeremiah's lifeless body into a dog kennel. By this time, Jeremiah was likely deceased, as far as Jordan alleged. According to Jordan's version, Thomas pointed a sawed-off shotgun at him and ordered Jordan to assist with his nauseating plan. Jeremiah's body was moved to the shoddy black futon in his own bedroom, and that was where Tracy reportedly located her son on November 26th, when she returned home upon her release from the detention center. Jeremiah was then moved yet again to the garage on the premises. Shortly thereafter, Thomas allegedly forced Jordan to accompany him on a trip to the local Family Dollar store, from where they stole supplies including plastic sheeting, duct tape, and rubber gloves. When they returned home to their garage, Jordan asserted that Thomas threatened to harm both him and Tracy if they didn't assist him in disposing of the child's body. Jordan and Thomas wrapped Jeremiah's body in the plastic sheeting and duct tape. His remains were then forced into a plastic storage container. In order to close and secure the lid, Thomas allegedly knelt on top of the container and wrapped it in duct tape. It was approximately 2 to 3 days before Jeremiah's remains were disposed of yet again. This time, it was the deserted spot near the highway where Thomas forced Tracy to watch as he and Jordan dug the hole that was intended to serve as Jeremiah's final resting place. It seems Jordan had failed to provide some essential details while pleading his case to the cousin. Or maybe he'd done his best to not reveal his role in the whole catastrophe. A chilling thought, and perhaps the cousin was pondering the very same thought. She reiterated that she feared for the safety of her own family. In addition, she expressed her worry for Tracy's young daughter.
I can't give you too much information about the case, but I understand you guys are worried about your safety, of course. We have made arrests so far, and some information has been discovered, of course, to arrest these people on that.
At that time, Jordan had joined Tracy and Thomas at the Santa Fe Detention Center. As the interview neared its close, the detective explained that remains were recovered, and though it was believed they are those of Jeremiah, DNA and dental records were to be used to confirm the identity with certainty. The investigation continued at a rapid pace, and the storage unit was searched on January 30th, the following day. Sure enough, the items uncovered behind those locked doors just further confirmed the absolutely chilling nature of the disastrous situation. A wheelchair and a large hammer were among the evidence recovered. A few days before, back on the morning of January 26th, you probably remember when Tracy and Thomas spoke on that three-way call coordinated by Jordan, prior to both parties being transported to the sheriff's office.
I've been crying every fucking day. Like, I cry almost all night long. Every fucking day, no matter what. Like, I fucking cry all the time. It's ridiculous.
For Barbara?
No, for the people.
Tracy doesn't sound like she's blaming Thomas for Jeremiah's death. She speaks as if it was inevitable, the way a parent would talk about their child passing from an accident or illness. But we know Jeremiah's death was not inevitable in any way. And there was more to that conversation.
I am crazy and you make me more crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you anything. You're already crazy.
Shut up. You're stupid. I love you.
I love you too.
I miss you so much. I miss you.
I miss you too.
One of the most confounding things about individuals with antisocial personality disorder is their ability to adjust their behaviors and interactions with others depending on the circumstances and on what suits their needs. Like a chameleon, they can take on different identities. In this phone call, Thomas also talks about family, spending the day with the kids and going to the zoo when he gets out, and date night with Tracy. He sounds like a family man who cares about his partner and their children. However, we know what Thomas did to Jeremiah, and it shows that when he switches to one of his other identities, it is one of pure evil. When Tracy concludes the call by telling Thomas that she loves him, it could possibly indicate that Thomas had her blessing when he murdered Jeremiah. But the sentiment seems to have slipped away quickly, and Tracy had a change of heart shortly thereafter. Soon, she and Jordan had become allies and were positioning themselves to place all blame on Thomas. The following call came just 2 days later.
Listen to me, son. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go and get all the titles from Juan. I want you to sign every single one of them. And I want you to sell all those cars. Well, except for the Benz, and if you want the Caddy, whatever. Keep one for me and one for you.
They had to make plans. The tables were beginning to turn.
That's the thing. Your dad is putting all this on me, so I might not get out for a while. They're charging me with child abuse resulting in great bodily harm or death. So I'm getting charged with the exact same thing he is.
Tracy was seeing the writing on the wall. Despite that, while her son's body was being extracted from the ground at that very time, she was still able to take some satisfaction in an alleged conversation between the police and Thomas, one that she shared with Jordan.
And he got all hurt and fucking almost started crying and some more shit because the cop told him, "You're a child killer, you like to beat women and children, and if we had the death penalty, you would fry, motherfucker." And his dad was all freaking out.
Tracy's laugh shows her lack of concern for whatever consequences Thomas has to face. A stark contrast from 2 days prior, when she and Thomas were saying how they love and miss each other. It seems like the members of this family are able to shift in and out of different identities, depending on the circumstances. It should also be noted that during the phone calls with Jordan and Thomas, Tracy certainly does not sound afraid, nor is she compliant in her interactions with Thomas, despite previous footage of Tracy sobbing and appearing like a helpless victim when in the presence of police. Typically, domestic violence victims have been forced into compliance because they fear that fighting back, or even arguing back, could trigger the perpetrator to be abusive. Tracy overall presents as an individual with no remorse and little to no feeling for her dead son, who was murdered after enduring unthinkable torture. Tracy then reassured Jordan that Thomas's fate had been sealed, according to police.
He was to pay for what he did.
Oh, yeah, he's going to. The cops told me that they were like, "We promise no matter what happens, he's not going to get out. Like, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison."
That prophecy would prove true, just not in the way you'd imagine. Their days were numbered. The truth was making itself known, and Jeremiah's existence couldn't be erased. The kid, known for his caring, friendly nature, had made an impact on many during the course of his short life. It came as no surprise when Jordan received the same charge referenced by Tracy. Of course, he maintained he'd had no part in the killing, as heard in a conversation with his sister on January 31st.
They charged me with child abuse and causing death. I didn't even touch Jeremiah. He looked up to me. I loved him. He made me help him get rid of the body. He had me at gunpoint.
Obviously, law enforcement didn't buy his claims. Thomas continued his theme, as evidenced from the following prison phone call that occurred in early April, likely between Thomas and his mother.
If they really were to look at things, they could tell that Julian did this because he already changed his story so many times, so he's the one who's lying. Whenever this stuff happened, I was asleep in my room. They were jumping around. I thought they were messing around, lifting it up, and I yelled at them to cut it out, and I went back to sleep.
Of course, from there, all blame fell on Jordan. But as the three defendants continued to maneuver, the charges remained, and rightly so. According to the autopsy, the cause of Jeremiah's death was determined to be blunt force trauma, and there was no question that he'd suffered ongoing abuse and torture. He had multiple jaw fractures and a recent fracture in his left hand. In addition, 3 of his ribs had been fractured, and signs of healing indicated the injury had occurred well before his death. However, the most unbelievably shocking development of all occurred at the end of April, and it would change everything. One more life had come to an end. It happened within a prison cell at the Santa Fe County Detention Center. The decedent had threaded a bedsheet through an opening between a metal bar and a window, a small area that lacked the sealant needed to prevent such an act. Thomas Ferguson was dead. On the wall read, "I died here." In a letter found nearby, he professed both his innocence and his love for Tracy. After Thomas's departure from the pending proceedings, the prosecution focused their efforts on the involvement of Tracy and Jordan in Jeremiah's death. Both faced at least a dozen charges. The prosecution asserted that it was Jordan who delivered the final deadly blow to the child. It's likely we'll never know exactly what happened behind those doors, nor who inflicted the final injuries that culminated in Jeremiah's senseless death. And though Thomas was able to escape legal recourse in yet another cowardly move true to his character, Tracy and Jordan had to answer for their involvement. In November of 2018, Tracy pleaded guilty to child abuse resulting in death. And a final twist, in continuing with the whole theme of this disturbing story, she also agreed to testify against Jordan. In exchange, she received a 12-year prison sentence. Jordan accepted a plea deal as well in October 2021. As a result, Tracy's testimony was not needed. Jordan pleaded guilty to child abuse resulting in death, in addition to 2 counts of tampering with evidence. He received a 21-year prison term. At Tracy's sentencing hearing, her own aunt, Jeremiah's godmother who'd cared for him and his sister over the years, summed up the case in one powerful sentence. It's easy to blame this on drugs and being the victim of a lousy excuse for a man, but the only victims in this case were Jeremiah and his sister.